see, I had a ritual in CSGO. Fairly simple. All you did was shoot the wall, you know. The bullets just kept going in one direction. The midpoint, crosshair, the little thing in the middle. You know, yeah. You see, when I did that ritual in Valorant, something bad happened. Something really bad. The bullets did not go in the middle. Valorant, Riot Games' first attempt at an FPS shooter. Many of the player base seem to think that it's basically a love child of CSGO and Overwatch. Now if anyone said that to me, I think that game would have been an abomination. Now look, I loved CSGO, still do, but Overwatch, that game's design is based on champions that counter one another, and let's not forget the role restrictions. Let's be honest here. It is incredibly hard to achieve that sort of synergy in solo queue, and also among friends, because nobody has a set exact amount of friends who like to play the role required. Chances are they all love to play DPS, as was the case with my squad, which usually ends up with the friends either not playing the game entirely, or one of the friends just being left out and eventually leaving the game because he's forced to play support. So the first time I stepped into Valorant, I was at the edge of my seat, because I was just waiting to be blown away by some random ass ability coming my way. Yeah. Now, you realize pretty darn quickly that the game is nothing like Overwatch at all. The number one reason for that would be that the abilities are far tamer. In fact, the vast majority of the abilities are like utilities. Basically cameras, drones, flashes, smokes. A lot of smokes. Oh yeah, let's not forget the damn walls. Now each agent has their own way to execute the said abilities, which is pretty nifty. And to make things a bit more tactical, all these abilities have their own cast time, or you can call deploy time. So you can't just go using your gun and using your ability at the same time, which is pretty good. Now reason number 2 correlates to reason number 1, that the true weapons of mass destruction in this game are the guns, for which I am thankful. So Valorant is more skill based, unlike Overwatch, which was, in my opinion, way more ability based. Now I think Valorant took inspiration from a game other than Overwatch, and that game's name is Rainbow Six Siege, a game that you all are very well familiar with, and also know that it uses a variety of gadgets such as cameras, drones, and traps, and other little various things to find out where exactly the enemy is infiltrating from, or where they are hiding. Even though those two games are pretty different in many different circumstances, Valorant's use of these abilities reminded me a ton about Siege, at least on a personal level. Now Valorant uses a more compact amount of guns for a more simplistic playstyle, but I found that to be a tad bit disappointing. The problem that I was faced with in Valorant is that it really lacks a good SMG. The Stinger empties its mag within 2 seconds, enough to kill a guy, but if there's another enemy nearby, you're pretty much dead. The Spectre is basically just a cheap Phantom for closer range. You see, CSGO had a large variety of guns, in that there are some pretty neat guns that a good amount of player base like to use, like the P90 and MP7, that both had a reputation of being noob guns due to how easy they were to control while moving. The Valorant's playstyle is incredibly harsh to movement. In fact, if you try to move while shooting, you can basically kiss your crosshair goodbye as it's going on a long vacation. So it's not surprising to me at all that the fact that Valorant does not have these sort of guns in this game. But I don't like the idea how the SMG tier of guns in Valorant are basically only viable if you don't have enough cash. I would have loved them to have their own niche, the same way the shotguns have one. Like they can completely one-shot you at close corners. Many people, including myself, loved the P90 and MP7 and chose them over other guns as a way to play the game. Now every gun has its pros and cons, and for the SMGs in Valorant, the only plus side is that they're cheap. That's about it. Now many of you would be okay with it because many of you hated the way the P90 and the MP7 worked anyway, but I just feel like the way of playing in this game is very monotonous. Now obviously the abilities in this game add a ton of variety, and it obviously way more than balances it out. And maybe in hindsight, having a gun like P90 would be way too OP in Valorant because there are too many close corners. But I personally think they should have a bit of flavor in the SMGs that would actually make you think of getting the Spectre over the Phantom sometime, because you have this specific corner that it works better on. Another tiny detail would be that the AWP basically has a very slow ADS speed, it feels very sluggish, and the recoil stabilization on most guns in Valorant is super slow compared to that of CSGO. So, overall Valorant is doing pretty well, and I think it'll continue to do well. The only question for the future is the type of agents they end up introducing to the game. Whether they shift the meta too much or not, that remains to be seen. But I hope they won't, because currently I think Valorant is in a good spot. Most champions or agents seem pretty good, and you don't really feel like any one of them is a must-have. Well, I mean, there are some like Brimstone and Sage, but overall I feel like there's a synergy that you can build across all of them. And other than that, the only other issue that I would say I have that on a personal level is that I get horrible ping in Valorant around 150, which is pretty bad for the game where you can basically one-shot people the moment you look at them. And it's pretty sad based on the fact that almost every other game such as Apex, Overwatch, Warzone, CSGO, they all have Middle East Dubai servers, while Valorant does not. So yeah, that's gonna be a pretty big deal for me if I'm gonna play this game competitively. Now, would I pour my heart and soul into this game the same way I did for CSGO and other games? Probably not. Now, this is a personal view, and I understand if most of you don't get it. But in the present day, there are so many games with a variety of aesthetics and gameplay designs, and nobody is really playing a singular game. If you're enjoying a singular game, then you're a lucky one, because I get bored pretty darn quickly, and I actually hope for newer modes other than the core gameplay, like how Overwatch did. And I think those modes, such as Lucio Ball and all the other things that they do, those modes were the best things about Overwatch, and still are, but sadly they aren't focusing on them anymore. I'd probably play Valorant with friends a couple of times over the week, but that's basically about it. Valorant is gonna follow the same design philosophy as League in my head. The main gameplay design will be based on pro plays, which is to be expected obviously, but the average player won't get anything new except for skins, of course. Now, having played League for 10 years, I just feel like League never really innovated for the time it was at its peak, and still is kinda. I just feel like there are better games who value a player's time. Overwatch was one of them, but sadly their gameplay design just didn't sit well with me or a ton of the other players. Like, even the things that League did end up creating, they're now dead. Like the Twisted Tree Line or the Crystal Scar. So yeah, I just, for some reason, can't trust Valorant just yet. Hopefully I am wrong, because I do enjoy this game. So, hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel to support it. And yeah, have a great day and take care. I'ma leave a sneaky ace video in the end. They're coming to me.
How long will your game last for?
One enemy remaining.
What the fuck, mom?
La 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 la.
What the fuck?
La 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 la.
Hey. What the fuck?